Good morning. My name is Patrick Barron. I'm not launching an ICO. I'm not here to sell you anything. My goal is to educate, inspire, and hopefully pique your interest about a really interesting topic called security tokens. Before I dive into it, I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I am currently the founder of the Blockchain Consulting Group based in San Francisco. Prior to that, I was president of a company called Ambisafe, and we are an ICO services company, helped launch several dozen ICOs, raised several $100 million for our clients. We also built a decentralized security token exchange called Orderbook.io that used something that was really interesting called a regulatory aware protocol, basically writing the rules of the road into the smart contract so the tokens were aware of when and where and to who they could trade based on the rules of the jurisdiction that was in. So by a quick show of hands, how many people here have participated in an ICO? A few people? Okay, excellent. How many people here own traditional financial instruments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, these types of things? All right, excellent, excellent. So you're familiar with the first half of this. I'll talk about the second half of this and how we combine these together. But first, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial advisor. Talk with one of those types of people if you have specific questions. Okay, so what is a security? According to Investopedia, a security is a fungible, negotiable financial instrument that holds some type of monetary value. And the types of securities that we are used to include things like equities, common stock, preferred stock. Equity typically comes with some type of rights as a holder. You either have voting rights or you have some type of rights to the profit of the company. Can have dividends. Equity typically has different tiers, meaning that you get different rights based on in a liquidation event. You are in a certain order. Equities were traditionally traded through paper certificates, which you can see over here on the right-hand side. We've moved slightly beyond that, but we haven't moved that far beyond that. We still rely on centralized systems to manage this and to facilitate the exchange and to provide the trust. You're also probably familiar with debt securities, bonds, debentures, banknotes. These are the types of instruments that both companies as well as governments have the ability to fundraise, getting typically a fixed return, and then at a certain point in the future you get your principal back, assuming that you don't have some type of default. And then of course we have derivatives. Derivatives can be extraordinarily useful if you are, say, a farmer and you want to hedge your risk. If you want to shift some of the risk of, say, weather, for example, or price fluctuation to the market, you can use a derivative instrument like a forward or a future to move that type of risk onto the markets. These are very useful. They can also be weapons of mass destruction, as we saw in 2008 with credit default swaps and how these types of things can go wrong. A double-edged sword, the derivative beast is. But nonetheless, these are the overarching types of securities that we typically think of, and they have brought us very far in building corporate America, in facilitating entrepreneurship, and really getting us to where we are today. So, what is a token? These are not computer science terms, but I think that they are more accurate for the descriptive purposes that we are talking about today. According to Google, a token is a thing serving as a visible or tangible representation of fact. A thing serving as visible or tangible representation of fact. You can also think of a token as a voucher that can be exchanged for goods or services. So when we talk about tokens in the crypto space, there are several different types of tokens that you're probably familiar with. The first of which is a utility token. This gives you access to a platform. It can give you some type of rights. It can enable you to use a service. Utility tokens typically provide some type of work. They are functional. They have utility value, so to speak. We also have what are called, what I consider currencies. So you can think of a currency as a traditional currency, Tether being the most prominent, stable coins, stable tokens. I also want to point out that the term coin and token are used pretty interchangeably. And depending on who you ask, you're going to get different opinions and different jargon. This industry, it does not have any type of standard. There's no Bible of terms as of yet. So tokens, coins, these things can be used interchangeably. Tether being the most widely used, what I would consider currency, but there's quite a few different stable coins on the horizon in the form of fiat-backed, in the form of crypto-backed, in the form of seigniorage shares that essentially are their own ecosystem. Really interesting project. So tokens, as we think of them, we have utility tokens that provide some sort of work, currencies that facilitate a means of exchange, and then of course we have securities. On this side of the slide here, we have Zcash. That's a privacy-focused coin. Ether, which I consider to be the original utility token. You could also say Bitcoin is the original utility token, but Ether is a more apparent example of that because you have to have Ether in order to facilitate a transaction on the Ethereum network. If you want to do work on that network, you have to have Ether. Now, when we combine the two, what do we get? This definition, I essentially just brought the two together and made a little bit of clarification. So let's see what it looks like. A security token is a cryptographic thing serving as a visible and mathematically provable representation of ownership to a fungible, negotiable financial instrument that holds some type of monetary value. Now, if you ask some people in the industry, this is the path to heaven. This is the path that is going to take us to trillions of dollars in value. Maybe we will see that. I'm definitely optimistic that we are going to see quite a bit of shift from the traditional financial world over to the blockchain world. And there's a number of reasons why. But again, a security token is a cryptographic thing. We could define that thing as a public-private key pair that controls access to some sort of data, some sort of smart contract, serving as a visible and mathematical, provable representation of ownership to a financial instrument, a fungible, negotiable financial instrument. Pretty straightforward. So, why is this such an explosive idea? What is the big deal about this, right? We've seen cryptocurrencies, we've had securities for centuries, perhaps millennia. We now have a programmable asset that can easily be issued and traded on a global open market that never sleeps. Programmable assets, these have to be regulators' wet dreams. I mean, you can literally write into the contract itself and programmatically enforce things like 99 accredited investors. Things like if you're not verified KYC, AML, and accredited, you can't buy this. If it hasn't been 12 months, that transaction is not going to go through. All of these types of rules and regulations and specifications and things that we have put in place, these can all be written directly into a smart contract that is programmatically enforced. The other thing you can do is that you can do this on a global scale. It doesn't have to be just the United States. You can do this for the United States. You can write in the laws of Singapore. I think there's 7 countries that have accreditation standards. And so the way that this works in practice is that you have what we call a white list of addresses, accounts on, we'll use the Ethereum blockchain for example, that you've gone through and you have been verified through a KYC process, an AML process, know your customer, anti-money laundering, and accreditation. This is typically done in some type of centralized capacity. At AmbiSafe, we did it in a centralized capacity. We used a third-party API to verify your identity. If you've ever signed up for an account on Coinbase, you're familiar with what this process looks like, and once you've gone through those steps, you get your smart contract, your account that you control, your cryptographic thing, so to speak, has a little bit of data associated with it. It knows who you are, which country you're from, and whether or not you are accredited. Now, I want to point out that it doesn't have your name and address hashed into the blockchain. That's not the point. It's just a box. It's either, yes, you're KYC'd, no, you're not. That's the level of information that is tracked there. On the other hand, you also have the smart contract that is the token itself, that is the security itself. And it's got its own set of rules. It's issued in the United States, and you also have done, say, Reg S, which allows you to sell a security outside the United States. Then the token knows, based on where you come from, based on the ID that's been verified previously, whether or not you can buy or sell it. This is a really transformational, this is a big thing. Because we've never had a system that enables entrepreneurs and investors all around the world, no matter how small or insignificant, to participate in capital creation. So it exists on a global ledger. The blockchain, open, permissionless blockchains are global by scope. They are global, they are borderless, and this gives opportunities to entrepreneurs all around the world. If you have a good idea, if you have a valid concept, then you can put your idea out there and we can back it. This is truly transformational. It also exists, of course, on an open blockchain. Open meaning who can read the data. Open meaning who can write data to the blockchain. Bitcoin, Ether, EOS, these types of blockchains are permissionless, which means that you don't have to have anybody's permission. This is a fundamental shift from the centralized system that we have currently, where you have to have certain credentials, you have to be in a certain class or category in order to access the capital, in order to access the system. The ownership records are immutable, meaning that if you control your private key associated with a token, you are the owner. In the United States, we have a saying that possession is 9/10 the law. In crypto land, we have a saying that possession of the private key is 10/10 the law. If you control that private key, then you are the unquestioned owner of that asset. And just like the internet, security tokens are neutral, making them fair for all participants. The existing financial system is not neutral, and it is not fair for all participants. You're naive if you think that that's the case. Most importantly, security tokens exist on a platform of trust, which makes them orders of magnitude more efficient to issue and trade. Orders of magnitude in terms of settlement time. Somebody mentioned that earlier. You take a T+3, a 3-day settlement time, down to a 15-second settlement time, or less if you're talking about something like EOS. You're talking about the cost to transact being thousands of times cheaper. We are in a position where we now have the ability to raise capital at an extraordinarily low rate and trade that capital in a highly liquid global market that never sleeps. This, most importantly, what I want to leave you with is that this is a social technology that has the potential to unlock vast amounts of capital. Again, social technology meaning that we create it. It is for us, it is by us. And we are going to see not only trillions of dollars worth of traditional financial instruments moving over to the blockchain because it is extremely efficient, and evolution always rewards efficiency. In nature, if you are not efficient, then you are going to be evolved out of the system. We are seeing the evolution of the system moving to a decentralized, open, borderless, permissionless, global, neutral, decentralized, amazing platform called a blockchain, called a DAG, called a platform of trust. So again, this is a social technology. It's going to unlock vast amounts of capital. It's something that I am proud to have been a part of at the beginning, something that I'm proud to be working with now. So with that, I will happily take any questions that you have. It's okay, you can clap. It's not against the rules. What questions do you have? Who here now knows what a security token is? Oh, all right, good. Glad I didn't confuse. What questions can I answer for you? Nobody has a question. Yeah, feel free to connect with me.